Hello, my lovely inspiring human potential community. Today, we are getting to use this universal love energy transmission session to unwind feelings of guilt and shame and patterns that are of these feelings, while also for guilt, the healthy version of guilt. So, when there's actually something that you want to make amends for, getting to achieve a state of, again, neutrality towards yourself, so compassion, and walking through the ability to use your lovely mind to decide how you want to take steps to make amends. And this one's a bit more with integration of the psychoeducation. I have an infographic here from the NICAB, nicabm.com, that I'll read to you so that you guys can hear about healthy guilt, unhealthy guilt, and shame. You can find it, just put it in Google, infographic, shame versus guilt, and nicabm.com, and you'll get the same. So the listeners can do that right now, because I'm sharing these universal love energy transmissions on the podcast at this point as well, but also the viewers. It's important to remember that we're lovely, lovely people, and our nervous system and brain is worked and is developed a certain way. So this institute, this company of lovely psychologists, neuroscientists, epigenetics, they probably have more than one area of expertise who are sharing information to help professionals, but it's really to help the world at large, because they make their infographics accessible to all. The same with purchasing courses that help you learn about working with trauma, and they're finding out how much our nervous system and brain are involved in our emotions. And so this is something that's not widespread. People feel guilt and shame, and they sit in their inner critic. And so my transmission for today is, as always, to share information that can empower you. And also, as an energy healer, in this case, we're using the universal love energy for those of you who will be open and receptive to this universal love energy, which is sent always for your highest and best good. It will be channeled through me into you. Give your consent, and you can say it out louder in your mind, yes. And I will take a minute here to connect to you. I'm now connected. For those who have said yes, are open and receptive to this energetic connection. And it is to support you as you look to achieve inner harmony, pursue inner growth, this constant mindset journey and lifestyle approach for the lovely community of listeners and viewers, and anybody who's new, welcome. These aspects that you are embracing in your day-to-day allow you to access your higher heart, mind, and body frequency, that lovely 5D, that unconditional love and neutrality, because you're activating and practicing to be in the ventral state, your nervous system's state of ease, which is when we're able to be socially engaged, grounded, openness, curious, because we're safe in our body. And we understand that, the day-to-day, that lack of predictability, the ego, the self, is not only regulated within us, but as a child we begin this regulation. So obviously there's an immaturity to it until we begin working with those feelings. And working doesn't mean you have to work on something per se, but it's when the feeling arises, disengaging from a neural network, which is usually a story that you've adapted because a teenager isn't an adult yet. And you began having emotions at that stage and not looking to the parents for comfort, but going to your peers. And so we develop certain habits, and the world at large, again, isn't all informed on the new psychoeducation, the fact that we have these defense systems besides the flight, fight, freeze, pause, such as please, appease, attach, cry for help, collapse, submit. So guilt and shame, very important emotions. They're connected to our societal culture as well. So let me begin, because I want to try and make a shorter version of this for you guys, because I know some people are busy, and also they're not meant to last always hours or half an hour. So let's make the most out of this moment. Here's the infographic, okay? So guilt versus shame. Guilt and shame are not the same. Understanding the difference between them can help us work through our negative self-judgments. When we are better able to grasp the difference between healthy guilt, unhealthy guilt, and shame, we can begin to halt self-criticism and reject shame messages. These are the things that take place from when we're little to when we're, again, growing up, and even as adults. I'm 42. I have plenty of friends and family members who have patterns and say things and think things that are of an inner critic. And most people will tell me when I share with them this data points that, oh, well, no, this is, just how it works. It's a mindset that people aren't used to hearing. No, it doesn't have to be this way. So for those who are wanting to unwind feelings, you can take action and also unwind completely self-judgment that doesn't help in any way, shape, or form. Okay, so guilt is often experienced when we act against our values. Shame, on the other hand, is a deeply held belief about our unworthiness as a person. Now, you'll find it interesting because I'm going to read the first. When it develops, when does helpful and unhelpful guilt develop? So we can experience guilt as early as 3 to 6 years old. Developmentally, guilt is a more mature emotion than shame. Shame, on the other hand, you can experience as early as 15 months. 15 months, guys, okay? Just keep that in mind because we all were 15 months. And I'm sure you don't really remember feeling that feeling. So there's behaviors that hold that feeling, and this is why important to know the body element is we have sensations and emotions and thoughts that have accompanied us for a long, long time. This is why shame is more deeply wired in the brain. It is more difficult to reverse. This sense of shame is a sense of unworthiness. I've seen it in people where they consistently default to the fact that they somehow lack something and don't deserve happiness. There's self-sabotage, there's self-judgment, there are patterns. And we're going to get to the Shaman's Dream Oracle card as well, because as you see, we have two lovely Shaman's Dream Oracle card in front of us. One we've already seen for those who have tuned into the episodes, and we'll still review it slightly, but the other one is very important today. The Magician's Sword, Confidence in Your Magic, because we're trying to unwind feelings and allow you to enter a state of ease, knowing one, all people have these feelings. It develops very young. Two, you can work with it. It's important to have compassion for self and the external and take ownership and responsibility, of course. This is why we're talking about the topic before getting to the practicing of focusing. And really, you can already start having a visual, I'm sure, of areas in your own life, in your own day-to-day, where you feel either guilt or shame, perhaps. And if there is none, that's awesome. That's very awesome, because it means you have complete self-compassion and know that you're imperfect like every other person. We are all imperfect, and that whenever we do something that we find goes against our values, we can always make amends. I know I always apologize when I get snippety with like my family members, or if I do something that upsets friends, I will apologize, even if I don't think I'm wrong. It doesn't matter, right? This is that place, taking ownership and talking it out and being able to be cool about it. We can all do this in smaller and larger scales, because it's about using our words, which grown-ups some forget to do. Back to our infographic here. So the definition of helpful guilt, which is healthy. Helpful guilt is a feeling of psychological discomfort about something we've done that is objectively wrong. Unhelpful guilt, on the other hand, is a feeling, so unhelpful, okay, is a feeling of psychological discomfort about something we've done against our irrationally high standards. Shame is an intensely painful feeling of being fundamentally flawed. And here I have about 2 or 3 people I'm thinking about. They don't have healthy households. So their way of talking to themselves is this flawedness in themselves. And no matter how I've shared that they're not, in the years of friendship, they consistently fall into that. Only you can, one, recognize your pattern of self-judgment and critic, and then unwind it the education here, the psychoeducation, is to help you understand it is in your body. Your body's yours. So it's about you, the breathing, rhythmic breathing, remember guys. And by the way, let us also clear the mind and be in a relaxed state as I'm sharing this information. Get yourself to this state of ease within you. We're together, right? So that you can unwind with love. It's very important. We're using unconditional love to help you feel self-compassion with these topics, with these feelings of guilt and shame. So as you're learning about them, I would like you to embrace yourself, your imperfect self. And if there are things that come up, to remember that, one, today you can always do something to make up for something that you feel you want to make up for, but self-compassion is what's going to lead you to being clearer in the mind, to being able to unwind this. And you want to do it for your higher potential, because staying in this feeling and these thoughts doesn't help you to be at your best as a person, the person you want to be, and to make amends and to rectify, if you will, something you feel you want to. These same, again, individuals, anytime they're given information, they will just use, no, but this is an emotion, it stays this way, and they will ex-nay what, psychologists, neuroscientists, again, people who study the human body, mind, and are finding how it works and explaining it to us. And the only reason is because there's not enough of them out there spelling it out. Once it becomes societal culture to know that any pattern of behavior comes from a defense mechanism, people will stop having a narrative for why they can sit in shame like that and feel that they're unworthy. That's all. So you guys get to hear it now. Those who are stuck in these patterns, once it becomes mass news, that's when they'll be like, oh wait, I don't have to feel this way. It's something that is very much part of that we group, but here we're a community of people that are self-empowered, enlightened, the Inspiring Human Potential community. That's why you're using inner growth and coming to these sessions and allowing yourself to work at your own pace. Because obviously, here's the thing, it's our lovely neural networks, it's our lovely default network, so it's your life, right? We have these experiences. Every day you get to bring self-compassion in, that's all. So we practice for a little bit together, and then you can come and re-listen and also connect to the universal love energy, which really helps to make it more soothing, because you've got that extra support of love. So moving forward, the example they give for helpful guilt is Chris hit someone while driving drunk and feels guilty. Unhelpful guilt, Pat forgot a co-worker's name and feels terribly guilty about it. Jamie, for shame, feels like a worthless person who is only taking up people's time and wasting space in the world. These are those individuals who do not have or haven't had healthy households and are adults. That's exactly how sometimes they'll describe how they feel, which breaks my heart. Cause of feeling. So for helpful guilt, it is caused by actions or behaviors that break objective definitions of right and wrong. Okay, because we all know the objective. If you do something wrong, we all know we've done that wrong thing. And sometimes we don't, but someone can point it out, and so you can make amends. Again, depends on the level of care that you have in holding on to that relationship. Unhelpful guilt is caused by actions or behaviors that break irrationally high standards. And they don't have to be high. I've seen people have irrational standards in general just because they were raised in a way that led them as a child to feel they had to perform a certain way, and it's unconscious. So they just don't realize that they're holding a certain level of pressure that is unnecessary. And this actually reminds me, I have a story of the unhelpful guilt. Was one of my first roommates in college lost the floppy disk, and they could not feel good about it. Like, they held that against themselves the entire day. They were so ashamed of themselves, so like, wow, how could I do this? And it was really sad. Again, I supported them, but they couldn't let it go. They didn't let it go until the day after, and really it was just because the day keeps moving forward. I'm a perfectionist, still am, even though I know perfection cannot take place. But I remember when I learned to move beyond the feeling, and it is because, one, I do have a mother who always reminds me that you can't make things perfect, but it was unreasonable to hold a feeling that wasn't helping me to be better at what I was doing. So realizing that when you're in a feeling of guilt or shame, you can't perform better because your body's actually it's upset. And we've learned how the brain works when it's angry or anxious. And so I realized that being upset was only making my way to get to perfection harder, and so less likely. And hopefully this helps those of you who are able to see, okay, wait, the benefit of relaxing, calming, being in a place of love is that I will be able to physically, because your higher infinite human consciousness is accessible from a calm brain, from a ventral state, because your body is at ease, and therefore your mind is working the left and right brain hemispheres together and not in a default network, not in a reactionary. You're connected to your prefrontal cortex. Remember, the ventral state allows us to have access to the prefrontal cortex energy. And just that part. Now, when we move to why we feel this way, we act in a way that breaks objective standards of moral behavior when we have helpful guilt, okay? So helpful guilt, we feel this way when we act in a way that breaks objective standards of moral behavior. Unhealthy guilt, on the other hand, we act in a way that breaks irrational standards of behavior developed early in childhood to please an adult. I'm going to repeat this again. We act in a way that breaks irrational standards of behavior developed early in childhood to please an adult. Some parents, it's not a criticism, they will, for example, yell at a child for laughing loudly because they feel it's rude, or for crying loudly. This will create an irrational standard of behavior, because even though you may not remember it, the body of you remembers it, and you will have learned to adapt, therefore not laugh out loud, not cry out loud, and it won't feel like the memory, but you'll find a level of discomfort and probably criticism in areas. I see people criticizing, for example, other people for being loud, and it might sound silly, but being part Italian, Neapolitan, it's like anytime somebody talks about loudness, it's like, okay, it's cultural, So this is a silly example, but it's to share something that a person can notice about themselves. Because when you are judging, criticizing in any way, shape, or form, or feeling guilty about something like that of yourself, it's irrational. But it comes for a reason. So now you can understand it and like, oh, okay, because you know your own household. So you know what type of refraining you got or not. And it's different than becoming a victim of the circumstance, which is what some people, when they talk about this unhealthy and unhelpful guilt, they're like, oh, because my parents didn't help me laugh, and they're reading books that talk about and use this example of when you were laughing, you got yelled at, and so you learn not to be happy. And I get what these books are trying to say, but if you break it down with neutrality, it's more helpful than pointing a finger and thinking of childhood as you being conformed to, trained to. You're not trained, you're not conformed, you're a person, you coexist, we coexist. So we have exchanges. It's called, family. It's something that can be looked at neutrally once we realize everybody has trauma, everybody has a way, everybody has an ego. So the parents did what they got taught, and vice versa. To point a finger, again, just keeps a person in a charged state, not unwound. You're unwinding anything that is a charged state when you're allowing yourself to explore it. And this is why there is not a pointing a finger, but there's ownership. And then there's exploration. You're using your prefrontal cortex and compassion towards yourself and external. Now, when it comes to shame, we see ourselves, why we feel this way, as unworthy and deeply flawed. Again, I share the examples of people I know because I understand when the psychologists are saying how it works. And it's something that only the person, and I've told this to these same people, only you can love yourself for who you are, how you are. And this is them coming to me directly for support, okay? Not just out of the blue. And the most recent one just reiterated completely how unworthy they are. It didn't matter what level of support they got. And so it closed off, the exchange closed off with, I will always be here to support you with my unconditional love. The worthiness is for you to find, because I can't give it to you as you're spelling out to me how you feel. And here's where we're at. Love you. And, they sent love you back, and that's that. You guys are the only ones who can understand this feeling and break free from it. And this is about breaking free in a way that doesn't set you free yet, but your mind, to realize that you had that deep of a trauma experience, and to take ownership and be like, okay, I get to unwind this shame pattern, this irrational, illogical unworthiness feeling that I don't deserve happiness, that I don't deserve the person I love, that I don't deserve the job. And not in I'm gonna manifest. No, I'm talking about the feeling, because a lot of people are talking about manifesting law of attraction. This feeling of unworthiness is so sad. When I see people really feel they are not worthy and there's no reason for them, and understanding it's so 15 months is when the age it comes. Please hear me. And I just feel it in my nervous system now as I say the word. And because I have people that I know, I can feel it at the heart. And so I'm asking you to sit with love with yourself. And it is something that will take time for you to unwind. But once the mind sees it and you can recognize it, that's the first spot. The spot is, okay, I have a pattern that doesn't help me to be in my higher potential because I actually feel unworthy. I have a pattern that is quote unquote toxic because I have an unhealthy, or had an unhealthy household that wasn't loving. It wasn't safe. I never felt safe in it from the moment I was in this house. And that is when the body doesn't feel safe, the mind doesn't feel safe. So you're negative. If you're hearing here, negative neural networks are because, of course, how can you feel the world is beautiful if you didn't feel loved and safe? And in the physiology is you didn't get to enter ventral state. I'm not going to prolong this too much, but I saw this video on YouTube of these infants. They were about 15 months, the 1 year to 2 year, where they had come from households of neglect and abuse. And, it's really sad because I saw those infants and then I saw the adults I know, and I can recognize the patterns. But because now they're adults, they get labeled, and they themselves have labeled themselves. And instead, when you see the child, you see, it still breaks my heart. You see the actual vulnerability. And of course, that child's going to grow up and protect the heck out of themselves in one way, shape, or form. So allow yourself to sit with love and love for self. When it comes to thinking of the situations, let's disengage from a why with an entity or a narrative, and just let yourself walk through the emotion, unwind the feeling of sadness, heartbreak, shame, anything that arises. Okay, so right now, as we breathe rhythmically, 5 seconds inhaling, 6 seconds exhaling, I'm going to finish reading to you this guilt versus shame infographic and move to the Shaman's Oracle, Dream Oracle card. Outcome, potentially positive, healthy guilt, okay? Because healthy guilt allows us to seek forgiveness and correct the wrong. It can lead to healing yourself and potentially the situation, but only if you take action to make amends. Sometimes people won't forgive people, and that's really sad to me. But sometimes people will. Only if you take action to try and make amends can you know what's going to happen, and it brings healing because love is restored, where instead there was heartbreak. So the unhealthy guilt is a negative outcome because unhealthy guilt leads us to emphasize self-punishment over behavior change. It traps people in guilt. Like some people that I know, it's not in the shame cycle, but they're in this guilt place. They're just living with remorse in their mind, thinking about what could have been, what should have been, what could have been done, and not taking action. And this can count in both when you've done something objectively wrong, or when you've done something that isn't wrong, like the one roommate that just couldn't get over the fact that they made a mistake. And this is here the difference. Their upbringers were very different than my upbringer, who basically would always tell me to stop getting upset whenever I'd do something and it wasn't 100% perfect, or when I didn't know stuff. So we do get taught how to be to ourselves, remembering what that looks like for you, and then being your own self since you're now an adult. But it still requires, if you will, the unwinding of emotional patterns that you had as a child. That's why you become an emotional adaptive adult versus staying in, an emotional functional adult versus staying an emotional adaptive adult, which stays in the black and white, doesn't forgive, judges, criticizes, thinks of right and wrong. The functional adult emotional person is in a ventral state. They're able to adapt to the situation. They know every person has trauma. You learn skills because you are actually looking to be in this curious state, in a compassionate state. So ventral state allows us to be safe in our bodies. It is something that you work with your mind, heart, and body at all times. It's working with the feelings and the thought patterns, but also in your engagement with people. Okay, so just feeling it in right now, the unconditional love for yourself, for humanity, understanding these two very important feelings, and being able to just get a hold of how it is with your brain when you're in a sense of ease. You're open. Now, the part of curiosity, that's up to you, as is the part of compassion. And when people will think of things as stale, I always say there's so much depth to every topic. How can you find it stale? It's up to you to realize how you lead yourself to think more, or how to lead yourself to simply focus on something you thought. Because, and I don't get it because I've always loved learning, but kids, I see the kids, they're at school, I hate learning, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be, and then I remember the teenagers said the same thing. So you grow up to think the same thing of your job. It's a pattern of thought that you didn't unwind, that you didn't recognize, and now you're an adult thinking, oh, I'm hardwired this way, not to mention lovely cliche sentences. And here's the, again, psychoeducation that's coming out, like the neuroscience too, that is sharing your, yes, there's a wiring, but you can unwind it, you can unlearn it. So let's unlearn, let's unwind, and let's achieve whatever it is you want to be as your higher infinite human consciousness potential being can be, which will come in a ventral state, because that's where you get to be open to a curious loop cycle versus one that keeps you locked into twos. So moving on, resolution. Healthy guilt resolves as we repair the damage we caused, taking ownership, apologizing, taking action. And if, let's say, the forgiveness is not happening, at least you can know, I tried. And that will lead you to, I understand, and that will lead you to what? I won't do this again, because I felt guilty and I didn't appreciate. And, again, this isn't something you learn. You can learn always. You can grow always. To hold it against yourself is irrational. And that's you staying stuck in a moment in time with the feeling, which is what can happen, because that's when there's no self-compassion. We're all imperfect. So we can all and will all make mistakes that are objectively wrong or right, okay? This is the part of self-forgiveness. Making amends or trying to, you took ownership, you tried, moving beyond the mistake as a person who's now an adult. You choose to stay in a place of guilt, or you can choose to move in a place of self-compassion with yourself. And this is that mammalian heritage where our attachment defensive state. So now I don't belong because I made a mistake. And this is under the illusion that humanity somehow is perfect, which none of us are. And in fact, again, a choice to remember this with all of humanity, that we all can make mistakes. It's not because there's good guy, bad guy. That's for those who stay in the duality narratives and not in the higher consciousness, avatar consciousness, Mahasamadhi. We've been talking about these topics recently, that infinite space. And again, ventral vagal state or ventral state, a functional adult who knows that nothing can be perfect all the time or ever really necessarily. That's the unhealthy guilt remains until we correct the irrational belief. And that's where we'll end that one. Shame is internalized and deeply connected to our sense of who we are, which makes it more difficult to resolve. Who you are is your choice, and now that you understand the deep sense that can take place, you can work with unwinding that sense of shame and understanding that, yes, it's a pattern, but every time it comes up, that's where you remind yourself, I'm worthy, I'm here, I live. This is a feeling I adapted to defend myself as a child in a household where I wasn't safe. I'm worthy for joy, I'm worthy for people that love me, I'm worthy. This is your thing that you can do, because the thoughts come about when you're feeling that sense. You can be your best cheerleader or not. The how to work with healthy guilt: face the behavior that hurts self and others, take responsibility for the harm done, seek forgiveness from the person affected, change destructive behavior and attitudes that created the harm, reclaim wholeness, and heal relationship with the person affected. How to work with unhealthy guilt. Separate, shame is unhealthy, but unhealthy guilt. Separate and resolve healthy guilt to uncover the unhealthy guilt. So take a moment to do that. Not now per se, but in general. Practice self-compassion and work to understand that everyone possesses a combination of strengths and weaknesses. Nobody's perfect. Seek connection with others. Joining a self-help group can offer support. Remember that everything and everyone that surrounds you has an impact in your life. Your support system is of the utmost importance to your expanding and potential expansion of consciousness. Abundance flows where energy goes, or abundance goes where energy flows. And really, if you're using that energy to explain yourself over and over again, or you feel restricted in that energy around people, you are taking away from your opportunity to grow that abundance, to grow the flow of abundance, to grow just energy flow, and to feel expansive. And it is about the mind, heart, and body, because you're not able to share your experiences and feel free. To feel free and not a prisoner with somebody is one of the greatest gifts you could ever have, because that's when you know you're understood. You feel it. And so that person or people will be always that. And when they're sharing with you thoughts and feedback in a way that also feels free and expansive and amazing and curious, again, within your own self, that's the same thing. It doesn't have to be with the external. You have that same relationship with your own thoughts if you choose to. It stems from your own, if you're in that inner critic. So if you're not in self-compassion, and if you're just in a neural network of criticism, how do you expect to expand your consciousness? You're thinking of things in a certain way with the feeling. Okay, so unwind this shame, guilt, take actions that help you, and allow your support system to be people that unconditionally love you. This is pure love, unbound, unconditional. They do not judge you. They do not criticize you. They listen to you. You have face-to-face, always truthful conversation. Doesn't matter if it gets heated, not heated. You know that there's transparency, because there's always a closing of love you, see you tomorrow kind of thing, right? And even laughing about that debate, perhaps, because of knowing of differences and stuff like that. So support, 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 even if it's just one person, better than none, and always have those in that peripheral vicinity for the very important moments. If you have none, you have yourself. And that self is what we are primarily working with. So for the how to work with shame, we want to exercise self-compassion to shift feelings of shame and move awareness away from self-criticism or proof of inadequacy. This proof is simply something you gave yourself as you're growing up, by the way. Pursue relationships, nurture connections, and a sense of belonging with others. So again, make sure that they are those individuals who don't shame you or guilt you. And so let's say you have a behavior, a pattern that is unlikable. People that don't help expansion is very clear what they'll do. They're going to point a finger and they will say, that's something I don't like about you. Not necessarily in that way, but here's that part of we're all imperfect in societal culture. there are relationships and people that obligate each other to do things. And this is a standard behavior because not everybody is in a space of complete self-compassion, which means they don't unconditionally love themselves. They think unconditional love means conditional love. So they have relationships where each other tell each other what to do. Unconditional love, as Sadhguru puts it, or love, he just uses the word love, which is true because love is love. I mean, to have added that word is because there's existence of conditional love. Love is when you don't tell somebody what to do, who to be. You love them for who they are, how they are. This counts for yourself. So let me focus on unwind these patterns of shame and guilt with yourself right now. Let us focus for a minute on self-love and compassion, and knowing that imperfection exists, and it starts with us. And then we can also, and want to also extend this also to people that come to mind that have pointed a finger or keep pointing a finger at you. And there's this way that they shame you or guilt you into staying with them or doing something you don't want to be doing. Again, there are many different scenarios that come to my mind. And even though that sounds so much like teenagers, I see adults in unhealthy relationships because they're not able to recognize from their mind, this is not true, this is not me, because they're in their own little shame cycle. And it's not little, it's very big, but they're not picking up enough of the psychoeducation to see. And even if they do, like the people who are that I know of, they still, because as long as you guys don't feel love for yourself, that's the part you need to know, that you are worthy. And right now I'm going to tell you, you are worthy because you live here and you're alive. And so from my heart, I'm giving you my love. Whoever you are, wherever you are, at whatever time you're tuning into this, you are worthy because you live. And no person in this life is perfect. Nothing is perfect. So whatever mistake, whatever stuff, people are holding against you and they're using, please breathe. And just know, everything I read to you, these are psychologists that work with people all the time and are trying to help them to break free from shame cycles of unworthiness and unhealthy guilt patterns that don't serve their higher potential. Consciousness is your mind and heart. It's you in your everyday life. It's happiness. Okay? So you're worthy. You live. Whatever is saying you're not worthy, they have their own stuff. Let them go. Break free from those people. You don't need people that are adults who are telling you to be perfect when they're not. What you need are people that say, haha, I made that same mistake once. Let's laugh about it, and make amends. For the true guilt, this is where I've had people I know that have, unfortunately, they gave the example of the car, and one of the people I remember was a very close friend. They would drink, and one night they ended up in an accident. They felt so guilty and horrible. They quit drinking. They drink not even a drop anymore. Some people will have half a glass. But this person, and then there's a couple more that actually had that type of situation, and they really, really felt guilty. They made amends, obviously, the families and people. It wasn't anything extreme. Well, actually, one of them was. So I believe they were not forgiven, because here's that part of humanity not realizing that we're all imperfect. They label a person that did something wrong, and they cast a stone. So putting that to the side with yourself, stop casting stones and stop letting others do that to you. Be an adult, know what you do want to do and be, and again, taking ownership is something very important. Doesn't have to go down a path of something wrong. And usually the people who make these types of mistakes are very young, and when they're older, it's because something happened in their life that made them go off, if you will. And this is not justifying, it's because of repressed emotions, ignored moments, and there's a moment where people break. Whenever you really do in-depth research on humanity and you see behavior, you understand that it comes from a place of not love, of not ease within oneself, of pressure that built day after day after day. So please, let's unwind within you The fact that you don't think you're worthy, if there is any of that, you're worthy, and whoever and whatever is around you that's making, again, claims or statements, no. You're imperfect. We're all imperfect. It's cool. It doesn't mean you need to be changing a laugh or a way that you do things or a way that you don't do things. But only you can give yourself that freedom, that ownership. And then to say, hey, I love you, but you're not cutting it for me. Now, some people you can have conversations, and there is a way that they can stop teasing you, for example, or the other person can accept that that's behavior. But this is for another episode, really another transmission session, if anything, where we can learn to grow and be compassionate in states with others who don't listen to us, and so that you're dealing with that. In the meantime, focus on self-worth and love. So right now, I want you to think of something or anything that was coming to mind as we're talking about guilt and shame, and that you've been working with self-compassion as we've been unwinding it. As you understand where the feeling comes from, this helps to bring you to neutrality with it, okay? And the entire topic, even with people that have wronged you or not. You want to be in this state to remember that we're all people, okay? So we can all make mistakes. Focus in on the two Shaman's Dream Oracle cards, and as you allow yourself to stay within a sense of self-compassion and neutrality towards those who are holding perhaps things against you. If there's any element of, what's the word, not resentment, but like, wow, wait, that is wrong. Like right now you've had this breakthrough moment, like that's not right. I should be able to do this or that, and this person's doing this or that. Allow yourself to just sit in neutrality and stay grounded with the aspect of all of us have an ego self. So we all did grow up with certain societal cultural norms, yada, yada, yada. So people will use those against each other. And it's not that it's against each other, but they're in the habit of having expectations in relationships of all sorts, assumptions. Everyone has them. And there's going to be just always this type of diversity as you gain self-empowerment, because you're accessing that self, the ego view, and you're growing up emotionally to be that functional adult. So you're in your ventral state. You're going to be able to calmly and firmly express yourself to those individuals. And really, you're going to disengage with people that do that, meaning their words don't have a shame or guilt effect because you love who you are. That's the beauty of the inner growth mindset, lifestyle, and journey. It's that it's about learning to love you as you are, expand you as you are with your imperfections and your perfections. The essence of you is the child you who grew up to be the teenage you. It's you. So looking at these lovely Metox and Magician's Sword. Metox, repairing the body, mind, and spirit. We just did that because for me, the spirit, mind and body, it's all you. It's the ego self of you. It's your lovely nervous system. It's the lovely brain that works. We're always working to defend ourselves when you're in a space of safety, knowing that humanity isn't an enemy. They're not a lion chasing you. It's just different opinions taking place. And so you're feeling the ego self is there. Everything transforms. So being able to remove, quote unquote, or put to the side, eliminate one, toxic thinking, the repairing of the body, mind, spirit. Really, you want to allow yourself to be in self-compassion, love, and clean house. So besides thoughts that don't serve you, catching yourself with that, also allowing yourself to release those people who are, one, holding you in a specific space that is not helping the expansion of you and bringing forth shame or guilt that is unnecessary at this point. It's stale, it's stagnant, it's maybe a repeat discussion, conversation. It's just, that's wrong. At this point, it's wrong. And also release judgment from those who have wronged you in the past. So if you're thinking of household and, things that have taken place that brought you to be here today, bring in love. Let love help you. Let just love be there. And let's not have a why did this happen to me that is for when you're calm and if you want to evaluate. But really, that why here is where there's infinite possibilities. Using time that way isn't going to get you to use your time in another way. So let's use your time and your passions with the people you want to engage in conversation, with the learning, okay? With the past, you want to bring love. So whenever that thought comes about, allowing yourself to recognize it. Of course, it's a memory. It actually is a part of me, and I will always remember this, but I want to grow up from it. I want to feel safe from it now. I can feel safe. I'm now, today. It's no longer here. That's how you're going to unwind the patterns of shame and guilt that came from the household. Only if you, every time it comes up in your own body, are allowing yourself to, my nervous system is remembering, my brain is remembering. Either I go to the negative neural network with this emotion of shame and guilt, or I allow myself to feel compassion for me and that situation and just leave it at that. Because when people get why did this happen? They stay in this battle with their own life. So the Me Talks is about you allowing yourself to move beyond toxic patterns of thought, of wording, of everything, as well as people that are not really helping you to get out of that mindset, and that instead are, again, reiterating things in a way that is not expansive for your lovely mind, heart, and body. The Magician's Sword, this is what is the new card here that we haven't seen before, is confidence in your own magic. Nothing can stop you, the beauty you seek. So it's about cutting cords that bind you to old thought forms and beliefs, or friends who are not true. Now, it's not that friends are not true, but again, recognizing those who are holding things against you that are not necessary. So we get to use this beautiful visual of this sword to say, okay, be confident in your magic, the magic of love, not the magic of a sword that needs to cut anything. But you've cut, if anything, the blindfold that was in front of you, and recognizing, yeah, I'm imperfect. And so are they. And so is this. I want that to be your power, because that's a freeing power. When you think of needing to eliminate people, you're still judging those same people versus allowing yourself to know they are imperfect the same way you are. We all are. Okay, so you are, again, the person who can unwind completely shame and guilt. It does involve unwinding it towards the external as well. Otherwise, it stays within you because you're actually reflecting it upon another person. So with this lovely sword, you can turn the beauty you seek or the goal you desire to bring forth your heart and to bring forth all of that which you see you want in life, right? They go on to say that the sword is not a tool, it's not a weapon, or it's a tool, not a weapon. You can yield it wisely, and you want to yield it wisely for the greater good. Find the stuck places where you are kept tethered to a toxic person, a particular location, or a faulty thought or belief, and let the blade do its magic. So again, let's break free from toxic people, particular location, and or faulty thoughts or beliefs. Break free meaning recognize what they are. Don't judge them, please. So unwinding is I recognize what's holding me in a position with a feeling and a thought that is no longer serving my higher potential. I want to, now with your lovely mind, what do you want to do? What can you do? So with people, okay, I don't want to have those people around me, or I'm going to have a conversation. Or if you've tried having conversations, that's it. I'm done. You will have the last conversation and just be done with it in a nice way. I've had that with a very close friend, and we still cordially say hello, we care about each other, but we don't have in-depth conversations. So there's many different ways relationships take shape once you're in a space of complete self-compassion and compassion towards the external. So 5D state of consciousness, this infinite consciousness, is you in an unconsciously loving, neutral stance in a ventral state, knowing as a functional adult, everybody's imperfect. There's no need for me to guilt or shame somebody. There's no need for that to happen to me. We coexist, and we can all behave with respect to each other. But there are moments where you're going to want to move away from and do things. You know if that's the case because you'll feel like a tight shoe fit. Okay? So, what else do we have from this Magician's Sword that I want to share with you? You have all the tools you need for the task at hand. It's within you. It's within you. And it's called your heart. It's called your mind. It's called your body. This is me. We're done with what the lovely booklet has. But as you observe these two lovely Shaman's Dream Oracle cards, I would like you to feel into a mind that is kind, a mind that is neutral, your mind. I want you to recognize your heart. And when it comes to the me talks, bring up if there is a specific guilt or shame, something, whether it be a thought or situations. Allow yourself to recognize what those are. You can make a list of them later. And for the feeling, sit with me for a couple minutes and allow the love to go to the, where is it in the body, you know. Allow yourself to relax and breathing. Are you rhythmically breathing? And allow yourself to know that you're safe. This is a feeling. It exists. Some people, maybe as you're tuning in, it's like, yeah, it's a sucky feeling. Yeah, but it is a feeling. Let's be neutral towards it. Let's understand that it does have a reason for being there. And the reason is not some narrative. Our ancestors and our way of life to defend ourselves. There's another infographic I don't have handy, but it's always about shame. And it was showing how it existed and it came about, again, from our nervous system, from a need to defend our actual lives. We evolved as a species and began to have our own towns, and when we'd, for example, get kicked out, then we'd be again against the nature, against wild. So there's a lot of different stories people share with the shame guilt versus the actual tangible experience. And I'll use a random example from this documentary on Netflix that I watched on dancing. They explained how dancing came to be because together rhythmically, when we're in rhythm, we make a bigger vibration, and that would make an animal think that we were a bigger animal, and that would help to defend us. Nobody probably really thinks of that unless they watched the same documentary, because I know when I found that, I was like, wow, okay, I should have known better. We don't remember where we came from. And people have had a habit for some time to just talk about humanity as good or evil with emotions in the mix. This is what we get to also transform in this lovely coming and already here 5D. When people talk about 5 dimension, it's a state of consciousness, it's a way of life, it's an eventual state, functional adults. And our science is helping to bring that to light more and more, as well as society. So unwind that feeling and don't judge it. Unwind your experiences, don't judge them. You're safe, you're here now, and you're a lovely adult and or young adult, depending on your age. And maybe there are some who are not adults yet, but whoever you are tuning in, watching, it's a friendship that you can build with feelings in your own body, because there's the self of you that is feeling it. And walking yourself through an emotion versus judging it is what's going to help you, as well as walking yourself through the experience versus judging it is going to help you to unwind. So as we clear these charged emotional and mental patterns around shame and guilt, as we clear, guys, anything personal that came to mind and your own sense of shame or guilt for things personal, again, that are from your day to day. So whether you've another or situation, external or internal, okay? I want us to breathe in the universal love, breathe in pure love, breathe in self-worth, breathe in imperfection, and breathe in a sigh of ease, because no one's perfect and we all make mistakes. And guess what? We can all make amends, because you're alive right now tuning in here. So bring a sigh of relief and think, what do you want to do to make amends, if there's anything that you know, objectively speaking, you want to take action on now, to try and seek that repair, that healing, that forgiveness, write it down. Make it a point, because that feeling won't go away if you don't take action to try. Your body knows, you know, you haven't tried to do anything for the unhealthy. Every time it comes up, and this pit of, I did something wrong. Did you? The irrational. I'm talking about the irrational stuff. Like the floppy disk, the girl who kept it against herself the entire night. She was so sad. Is that rational, or is that just you being a person who has a society, and there's a very ingrained way they talk about this perfectionism and the way it doesn't help people. So it's mechanical, it's physical. Only you can work with your neural networking and your nervous system. And this is why it's a pattern. So we are unwinding, uncharging, clearing, but this pattern is something that you've been used to. So only you, when that pit comes up right now, if that is there, you're imperfect. We're all imperfect. I want you to give a sigh of relief, and to really try to give a sigh of relief. It's not even about justifying it. That doesn't clear it. No, you're in a pattern of, I want to be perfect. It's okay. We all, have this idea. It's okay to have that, because the minute you're forcing yourself to try and make it right is the minute you're going against the pattern that you've actually adapted to defend yourself right here, to please an adult. So allow it to be, it's okay. I feel this way because I wanted it to be perfect for. So let me just breathe in. It's okay to be imperfect. And you allow yourself to accept imperfection in a feeling sense for as long as it takes. You'll know when that day happens that you've cleared the pattern. And I'll use me as this example, because with perfection, it wasn't my mother, it was my own stuff. And I remember I was about 18. I recognized that, and this was through reading a psychology book, but I'd recognized that my perfection was really me trying to make sure I'd get an outcome. So it was a bit fear-based. And I'm like, well, this feeling's not helping me. Again, the feeling's not helping me to perform better. And really, it's inconsistent with my faith that things will always be okay. And that, you can always try. There's not a mistake that isn't meant to help you acquire skill, information. And so again, mindset. And the feeling is what I dismantled. The perfection, I still plan everything. And people that know me my entire life still say I'm a perfectionist. But the feeling is different, guys. Because I don't hold it against myself when I make a mistake. While I used to as a young teenager. Not to the extent of the roommate. That, for example, was way extreme. But I'm just saying. So you're going to sit with it. And you will know the day you freed yourself from that feeling. Because it's a bodily sensation that you no longer experience. That pit in the stomach, that actual feeling of unworthiness for having made a mistake. You don't have it anymore. You just realize, oh, I made a mistake, quote unquote. Oh, it's okay. It's not perfect. For shame, the same thing goes. Allowing yourself to know you're worthy, and here's that you're worthy just for living. That's up to you if you're going to allow yourself to have the feeling of, yeah, you know what, maybe I'm not somebody who contributes to X, Y, and Z, but I live. It's the same thought and feeling and the same pattern. You'll know when you're free of it the day you finally say, yeah, you know what, I live. Screw you for thinking that I'm not worthy, to somebody who maybe will label some character trait or something that has happened in your past and is holding it against you. Again, it's like you're going to be like, dude, no, that's not right. That is the day for those, and I always wish for those people that I do know. They don't want my support that way, or anyways, they only seek certain types of support. But when it comes to the supporting the neural network, the revisiting of their narratives, they're like, nah, I'm unworthy. Nah, life sucks. So again, it's always up to you. Now, hopefully, this supports your complete clearing and unwinding of shame and guilt in a very loving, compassionate way, to the best of your ability every day. I want you to feel worthy, loved, and with respect to humanity, knowing that they're imperfect as well, and to come back and tune into this episode anytime you need to rehear this. to hear pure love, unconditional love for self and for others. And shame and guilt is something we all carry, and we all have patterns that are healthy, unhealthy, and some obviously a lot more part of their ingrained habit. It's all the same depth for every person in a different way, because it's not a competition. A feeling is a feeling, and it will have the same impact on your mind and your heart and your body. So breathe in this bit of universal love. I'm embracing all of you. You're all perfect with your imperfections. We all are. And our lovely humanity is evolving as it always has, and it will continue to do so. And we'll continue to support each other and be less afraid of each other as we learn that there's a lot that comes from fear that has a different name, but it really is all these infants who had toxic households, and their body was not safe for 1 minute, ever. So their ego self developed a way to defend themselves that we can unwind and clear and bring to different space all together. So for you that have tuned in and or watched the video, I'm now disconnected. Allow yourself to take that lovely action for making amends in any way, shape, or form that you've found you want to, cutting the situations that are holding back and keeping shame cycles that are unnecessary or guilt cycles that are unnecessary, and not allowing you to move into beautiful space of sigh of relief, of it's okay to be imperfect. And I'm serious when I say this. It's okay to be imperfect. Today's a new day, and tomorrow's unknown, and the lack of predictability, our nervous system's always going to defend you. So always like, there's something I don't know. So let's get rid of the shame and guilt that doesn't support us to be breathing and thinking clearly with that unknown. That's really scary, right? What's going to happen tomorrow? But don't have people that are holding you in these cycles. They're not necessary, and they don't bring you anywhere. So see you again in the next episode / transmission session. So again, I have disconnected from you. I always want to make sure I don't forget to share with you guys. And remember that your biggest power is your heart, is your mind, and it is yourself. It is within you. That you find the ability to tap into that lovely consciousness and be enthralled and blissed by life, by you. And when it comes to those things that are scary or hurtful, it's always within you that you can make a day a good day and take steps to lead yourself to specific space and the circumstance. See you again soon.